How's it going? Welcome back. It's Jonathan. It's been a long time, but I said that I would do this video uh, probably 3-4 months ago, and I never got around to it. I have been out and about traveling, but nonetheless, I got 20 minutes, so let's see what we can whip together. Unfortunately, no special mic recording equipment or anything. I'm just recording straight off my desktop mic, so if it sounds like shit, apologize. But one thing that I wanted to go over was the potential cycle playing out in Australia right now, which is resulting in this anti-Australian feeling. Now, I have personally given up on Australia. I am seeking other locations to live in around Asia and whatnot. For a few reasons, I won't go into them here. But Australia is currently on a downfall, and it's been in a downfall for several years right now. But this is just part of a cycle, okay? Now, the cycle will play out, it'll end. But what's important is what happens during the cycle, which basically will reflect into the future and influence future cycles, okay? So, what I want to kind of get at is when a cycle plays out in the stock market or whatnot, and you have uh, the market running up into the end of the cycle, and then the cycle indicates that the market's likely to fall after that. Well, that would then indicate into the future that we could expect a possible top in the future, or if the cycle inverts, then we might expect a bottom in the future. So what I'm trying to get at is what plays out during that cycle phase is what can influence the future. So the cycle will continue to repeat. In this instance, it might be every 100 years, it might be every 500 years or whatnot. I'll go over a potential cycle that's playing out now. But what happens during that cycle is what dictates what happens as the cycle ends and then begins again. And then it also influences what can happen into the future. Okay, so Australia's on a bit of a downfall at the moment. Unfortunately, we have these posts saying that the colony will fall, Melbourne Captain statue cut down, whatnot. This is a major issue right here where we have, unfortunately, what I believe to be Australians with potentially no Indigenous background acting on behalf of the Indigenous and basically saying that the colony will fall and that Australia is going to collapse and whatnot. Unfortunately, this is to be expected, and I'll go into the reasons why. But first, before we go into that, let's take a look at what Gann had to say about future cycles. And this is in his book, The Tunnel Through the Air, and he had date stamped this on January 28, 1927. And it was chapter 7 of his book. Okay, so you can take a look. You can go download his book. You can buy his book, The Tunnel Through the Air. He says, in making my predictions, I use geometry and mathematics just as an astronomer does, based on immutable laws. I'm a believer in the Bible. Okay, so put aside anything that you have personal beliefs or whatnot. This is just Gann's writing, okay? It is the most wonderful book ever written, a book of science, philosophy, and religion. I claim that all scientific laws are laid down in the Bible if a person knows where to find them. He says, refer to Matthew 7:7. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall open unto you. I hold that the Bible contains the key to the process by which man may know all there is to know about the future if he will only seek diligently for the rules laid down in the Holy Book. My calculations are based on the cycle theory and on mathematical sequences. History repeats itself. That is what I have always contended, that in order to know and predict the future of anything, you only have to look at what has happened in the past and get the correct base or starting point. My authority of stating that that the future is but a repetition of the past is found in the Bible. He then goes into Ecclesiastes 1:9. He says, the thing that hath been is what shall be, and that which has been done is what shall be done. There is nothing new under the sun. And again, from the same book, that which has been is now, and that which is to be done has already been. Basically saying that everything repeats, okay? This makes it plain that everything works according to past cycles, and that history repeats itself in the lives of men, nations, and the stock market, which is something that I've also tried to show you as well. Whether you follow me on Facebook, I've made my Facebook group, my Facebook page public now if you want to follow my forecasts and things that I talk about. Unfortunately, the YouTube platform isn't the easiest to do this on, so I just post stories to Facebook and Instagram all the time, going over all the cycles, going over things that are repeating, our yearly cycles that are playing out, etc. This book that I'm going through now is basically a must-read if you want to know anything there is to know about forecasting. We're told that the great continent of Atlantis, for centuries submerged under the Atlantic Ocean, possessed a civilization greater than ours today. The people of Atlantis had their telephones, wireless radios, and aeroplanes. There is considerable truth in that statement. According to mathematical sequence, the wonderful inventions that brought comfort and convenience to the Atlanteans are due to reappear again and are now only on the threshold of another great age. Okay? Remember, everything in the universe is elliptical, circular in motion. That applies both to the abstract and the concrete, the mental, the physical, spiritual. Every thought you think makes a circle and it comes back to you. It may take years, but you will get the effects, good or evil, according to as a thought was either good or evil. That is the truth we should learn, and the world would be better for it. In making my calculations on the stock market or any future event, I get the past history and find out what cycle we are in, and then I predict the curve of the future, which is a repetition of the past market movements. The great law of vibration is based on like producing like. Like causes produce like effects. Wireless telegraphy and phonography and the radio are based on this law. The limit of future predictions based on exact mathematical law is only restricted by a lack of knowledge of correct data on past history to work from. It is just as easy to figure 100 years or 1,000 years in the future as 1 or 2 years ahead, if you have the correct starting point and know the cycle which is going to be repeated. Now, the reason why I'm reading this specific chapter is because this is like a literal chapter, okay? There's many other chapters in his book where it's kind of like you got to decipher what he's saying, you got to decode it and whatnot. This is basically literal. And if you read this chapter 3, 4, 5 times, it might not click eventually on what to do, but basically as your knowledge progresses, this information will then start to make sense. A few years ago, even scientific men, not alone the public, would have laughed at such a thing and refused to believe it. But mathematical science, which is the only real science that the entire civilized world has agreed upon, furnishes unmistakable proof of history repeating itself and shows that the cycle theory, or harmonic analysis, is the only thing that we can rely upon to ascertain the future. Some time ago, an article appeared in the New York American commenting on the writings of Sir Arthur Evans, foremost English archaeologist, who published The Peace of Minos, a book concerning the ancient city of Minotaur, if that's the right word. He described the excavation on the Isle of Crete in the Mediterranean Sea, in which they found modern apartment houses, bathtubs, and corsets, the same as used today. The plumbing that they found was so excellent that it was still working after thousands of years. It is estimated that that ancient city was destroyed over 5,000 years ago, or 3,500 BC. The fact that a long time elapsed before apartment houses became popular again is another proof that history repeats itself, and it shows there is no new thing under the sun, but that we simply resurrect the old ones. How do I forecast future cycles, you may ask? In order to forecast future cycles, the most important thing is to begin right. For if we have the right beginning, we will get the right ending. If we know the cause of the effect, then there can be no doubt about predicting the future event or effect. I have always looked for causes, and when I determine a cause, I can always be sure of the effect or future event that which I predict. He goes on to say, it is not my aim to explain this cause of cycles. The general public is not yet ready for it and probably would not understand or believe it if I explained it. In every law of nature, there is a major and a minor, a positive and a negative, and a neutral. Therefore, in cycles, there must be a lesser, a greater, an intermediate cycle, or cycles within cycles, like Ezekiel says, wheel within a wheel. Time is the great factor that proves all things. The measurement of time first originated and is based on the Earth's motion upon its axis. One of the smallest cycles or time factors which repeats regularly in the things that are very active and have high vibration is the 4-minute cycle. The reason for this is that the Earth moves 1 degree every 4 minutes. The next cycle is 24 hours, the complete time required for the Earth to make 1 revolution upon its axis. Now, above here, he says, it is not my aim to explain the cause of cycles. The general public is not ready for it and would probably not understand or believe it, even if I explained it. And then down here, he goes on to explain the cycles. So he's kind of like sidetracking here, saying, even if I explained it, you won't believe it. And then he kind of puts it in here. The next cycle is a 24-hour cycle. Okay, this is how man measures his cycle of a day. The next important cycle is 1 year, the time required for the Earth to move around the sun. This brings about the 4 seasons of the year. These are the minor cycles. Okay, he goes into wheel within a wheel and he talks about the minor, the major cycles, etc. He's talking right here about the minor cycles being the 4 seasons of the year. The major cycles run 5,000 years with variations based on minor cycles. In order to be sure of world events and important changes, it is necessary to go back at least 1,000 years and prove up the cycles. We find ample proof of the 1,000-year cycle in the Bible. A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, the Lord, will hasten in its time. Also, 1 day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day. Another evidence of the 1,000-year cycle. And he laid hold on the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. If we go back 1,000 years, we can find ample proof of how history is repeating itself in the past few years. From around 1916 to 1923 AD, Europe went through about the same conditions that prevailed 1,000 years later, or around 1914 to 1920. During the first period referred to, European experienced wars, panics, crop failures. History shows that in 1916, agriculture in the British Isle was at its lowest ebb, and there was a great scarcity of wheat and corn. Very few people were engaged in tilling the soil on account of wars. The same conditions prevailed 1,000 years later. And he goes on to give several examples of basically all these cycles playing out, and then he goes into future cycles, etc. This is the literal part of the book, and I think that if you can understand the literal part of the book, then it's going to make your journey into cycles even greater. Now, what we want to know is a few things about what's playing out in Australia. And I just wanted to reiterate again 2 points in this. The first one is that which has been is now, and that which is to be has already been. Okay, there is nothing new under the sun. And the second one is wheels within wheels. Okay, so if we can understand the wheels within wheels concept and that history repeats, it's going to make this a little bit clearer to, I guess, not, you don't have to believe it per se, but we're trying to look for an explanation of what's going to occur. And with the theory of Australia, I have possibly found one cycle that's playing out, and that is what I wanted to show you today. So what we're looking at is the period between 1770 and the arrival of the first fleet in 1788, January 26 specifically. And that's going to be our time period of what we call a natal chart, or the birth date of the cycle that we're playing out. Remember, Gann said if you have the right starting point, you'll know what to expect at the end. Okay, that's the cycle beginning and ending. Okay, so the colony will fall, elders getting back their land. I don't want to be racist in what I'm saying at all. Okay, so when I try to explain something right now, I don't want to come off racist. I'm not trying to target anyone. However, what's happening is we basically have in Australia a silent invasion. Now, there's a silent invasion. I'm not going to go into the Muslim invasion that's happening or anything like that. That is a completely different topic with political motives, etc. But we have basically a silent invasion with politicians of Australians being invaded by the Aboriginals. I know that in the past, the Australians invaded the Aboriginals, but now we're getting that reverse effect, okay? That cycle is playing out in reverse, or we're getting the inversion of that cycle now, okay? So, Kabi elders say that life will still go on in Queensland, etc. What happened in Queensland is basically what's happened, I believe, South Australia and Perth, etc. They're getting thousands of acres of land given back to them, or they're being claimed title of it or whatever. We sure hope to God that they're going to pay their land taxes, right? Anyway, let's not get into the political side of things. Let's take a squiz at the cycle that's playing out. So the first time period that we want to be looking at is the first wheel. Okay, now I'm not going to try to go crazy into this, but we have 2 wheels playing out. We got the first wheel, which is the major wheel. Okay, this is our 0 degree to 360 degree wheel. And then we have all these wheels inside it. And all these wheels are basically the planetary wheels. Okay, so we got the Pluto wheel. We got the Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Moon, and then Sun wheel, which are playing out from a geocentric perspective. And basically, as time goes on, I'm just going to open up a new chart so I don't mess up this one. As time goes on, all these wheels are playing out, and we have cycles within cycles, wheels within wheels, or minor cycles and larger cycles, okay? Major cycles, as they would be called. So I'm just working on a VPS at the moment because I'm recording this from a Mac, because I've just borrowed a Mac because I don't have my computer on me at the moment. But basically, if we go forward in time, I'm just going to go forward in days. If I just hold this down, if it's going to work, we'll see all these cycles. Basically, let's focus on the bigger cycles, such as Saturn. We can see that these wheels, not very clearly, unfortunately, these wheels are moving. If we look at the moon, for example, that wheel is moving around the Earth, okay? Then if we look at the Mercury has a slightly larger cycle, so it's going to be playing out over a longer period of time. Probably making a lot of noise on the mouse there. But basically, all these wheels are just going to keep rotating. And what's important for the longer term cycles are, or the bigger effects, or the bigger things that are occurring in the world, are our longer term cycles and not our shorter term cycles. So we want Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter. We want to know what is occurring there. So let's go back to the period of 1770. This is 29th of April 1770. And this is the wheel structure. We can see Pluto is between the 270 to 300 mark. We can see Uranus is 30 to 60. We can see Saturn is between 90 to 120. Neptune is between 150 to 180. And Jupiter is 240 to 270. So if we move forward now and we want to get the structure or what occurred up until 1788, which is when the first fleet arrived, and just keep in mind that there was an 18-year period between basically the idea that they're going to colonize and then the actual colonization. So it was 18 years in time. So we move forward and we're trying to basically get to 1788. We're going to scroll back the dates so that we can get to... Try not to click, because I know the clicking each time I click on this is going to bring up a noise. Okay, 4 more years. Oh. Not going to touch anything. I don't know what's happening. Getting a bit of a lag here. Okay, we're going to go back to January now. January 26th. If I can get there without too much hassle. Doesn't have to be exact, and I've got my time, which only really matters for the shorter term cycles such as the sun and the moon. Doesn't really matter otherwise. Just set it at 12 noon, okay? So what we have here is we've got Pluto basically moved from the 270 to 300, out from 300 to 330. We got Jupiter 60 to 90, Uranus 120 to 150. So they're sort of in this period around here, Jupiter and Uranus down the bottom, and we got Saturn and Pluto basically up the top here. So now what we want to do is we want to fast forward to today, because we want to know what the repeating events are to today. So I've got the chart up here, and we have Pluto basically between the 300 to 330 degree angle. We've got Saturn currently sitting on the 330 to 0 degree, and we have Jupiter down here in the 60 to 90 degree angle. So if I just go back to here, we have Pluto, Saturn around this period right here, and we have Jupiter around this period right here. These are planetary cycles coming in to their same effect. So now if we go forward in time, what this is when you have the start of a cycle, let's go to Pluto. Pluto has a cycle length of 248 years. That means it takes 248 years for Pluto to go from 0 all the way around to 0. 248 years. This is one of the longer term cycles that are playing out now, because it's taken 248 years for us to feel the effect of the colonizing of Australia, and that effect is being played out right now as Pluto is coming back to its base. Okay, it's gone through its base because 2024, 1770 was around here, and then we have 1788 up here. So it's going through its base over that 18-year period, and we're going to feel this effect intensify right into that 248-year mark, which is going to occur in the near future. We've also got the Jupiter cycle, which has gone around hundreds of times now because Jupiter is a much shorter term cycle, but it is also in the same ballpark as it is now, as it was before. We got Uranus down here, we got Saturn up here. So let's go forward and let's see if we can find the mass effect of Pluto coming forward around to this point. This is when the cycle is going to be coming towards an end, and we're going to see an acceleration, basically an acceleration in what's occurring in Australia. And I don't want to say the downfall of Australia, but the downfall of what we know as Australia today, unless we can get people in that will be strict on the rules and not be, I guess, lenient on what's occurring. Alrighty. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Oh, I know why. I had the real ephemeris turned on. Okay, let's go forward in time now. And what we're looking for, if we want to be very specific, is we want Pluto to match the same angle or the same degree that Pluto was on in the past, which is 315 degrees, which is the date of the colonization, because this is when we're going to feel mass effect, okay? And that basically what happened after the colonization is going to start to repeat itself, unless things alter its course, okay? Okie dokie, so 315 is not going to be hit. Going retrograde. Pluto's kind of going retrograde for a while, so it's going to stick around this area for quite a while. We can see that by when I move the timer back, Pluto's degree is actually increasing. Now it's decreasing as time goes forward, which means it goes retrograde, and we can actually see the little R symbol pop up here. So that's basically going to hold the time period of which this whole issue is going to occur, because Pluto's stuck in its same area. We've also got Jupiter back in this area too, even out to 2036. Uranus is also catching up to where it was at the very start of the cycle too. So if we get Jupiter back, let's see if we can get Jupiter back when Uranus is down there. No. So we've basically got around 2040, where we have Uranus in its starting base. We got Pluto around its starting base, and then we also had in the past around 2036, where we have Jupiter back in its starting base too. And if we go even further back in the years, we'll see Saturn back at its starting base, which is going to be around, so we got Saturn basically between Saturn is in 300, so it's Pluto, so we're not getting the exact effect repeat there, but Saturn comes back into its 330 degree to 0 degree angle around this time period too, which is around 2023 to 2024. And this is kind of all the repeating cycles that we see play out, and why I believe that mass effect is going to occur in the future when basically around 2030, when Pluto gets back to its starting base of its cycle 250 years ago, okay? All the other smaller cycles are just going to vibrate their vision on a smaller landscape, but I think it's Pluto which is going to have the mass effect, and then obviously Uranus when it gets back to its original starting point, okay? Again, that's just going back to the whole thing that Gann says, cycles within cycles, things that have been will be done again, okay? Things that have been on the wheel will be done again, okay? Everything's just continuing to rotate around and around and around. and that history does repeat itself. So that is my reasoning as to why Australia is on its downfall. Whether Australia comes out better or not than what it is now it's hard to say, because it depends on what occurs during this time period. But by the looks of it, they really want the colony to fall, and that doesn't surprise me, because it's just an inversion of what occurred at the beginning. Okay, instead of Australia leaping forward and getting stronger, you see, basically, if think of it this way in the stock market. Okay, let's bring up a chart here. I'll try to bring up just any old chart, say the Dow Jones. Please don't be slow. I'll try to explain it on a stock chart. So if we had, I'll get a pencil. If we had 1788 here, okay, so this is basically a starting point of a cycle. So Australia could be either at the time heading up or heading down. We're not too sure. We don't know the history of that. But basically the fleet came in, the cycle was moving down, and then once 1788 occurred, the economy in Australia started to boom. Okay, so the things started to happen in Australia. Let's just all agree that before the British came, there was nothing happening in Australia. It was just possibly some caves and some huts. I don't know how the Aboriginals lived, but let's just put it that way. And then the Europeans came and they started to build things. Okay, roads, railways, etc., etc., etc. Again, this is my lack of knowledge on the Aboriginal history, but let's just put it that way, just for a descriptive period. And then we move forward in time, and then this is 2024, okay? Or this is the period between 2020 to 2030 or 2040, when that cycle ends. What happens here is going to depend if Australia is going to be stronger and it's going to hit a double bottom or another bottom in its economy, and then skyrocket higher and become like one of the strongest nations in the world, or if Australia is going to experience, let's just say, like a 1920 type period, 1920s. Okay, just trying to give an example of what can happen if a cycle inverts. But the internet does not believe me that this is a good timing. Or if this is going to occur in Australia, and this is going to be the booming of one of the greatest countries in the world. Everyone wants to move here, everyone wants to be here, and then everyone starts to threaten and destroy Australia, and then the colony falls over the next 40-50 years. Okay, that's kind of the outcome of what can occur. Now, of course, we all know that cycles start and they end, but we want to know, are we having an inverting cycle, or are we having a cycle where it began to where it ended, so bottom to bottom, top to top, bottom to top, where it goes, basically the cycle ends and starts on an inversion. That is going to be what determines Australia's future, and that can only be dictated by what the political leaders are doing in the country today. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you anymore. That's just kind of my thought process and thinking, and I apologize for the slowness of the remote desktop there, because I wasn't able to fully explain it to you. However, given my capabilities at the moment, I hope that this was a good explanation of what is playing out in the world today. No new video on the horizon just yet. However, I will be settling down back in Vietnam soon, and I plan to produce more content for you. With that said, I'll talk to you soon.